Question is, can you support the Home Rule Charter as it is currently written? Why or why not?
Yes, I do support the Home Rule Charter as it's presently written. The simple statement on why I support the Charter for the way it's written is because it gives power to the people. It empowers the people, and people should always be more powerful than their government. Our current form of government is general law. The Home Rule Charter will allow us to transition to Home Rule status. There are some key elements in Home Rule status in the Charter the way it's written. Most notably, it gives the people the power of initiative, referendum, and recall. Gratefully, initiative is if voters want to bring an initiative to their council members or to council that they don't feel council is paying attention to, they can use a procedural mechanism, gathering signatures, bringing a petition, and bring that to the voters and to the council. Referendum, likewise, is a power of if the council is doing something that the citizens aren't necessarily wanting or not doing it in a way that they want, they can go through the procedural mechanisms and have that change effectuated directly. Recall is if you have an elected official who's acting outside the bounds, voters can take the initiative or take the procedural mechanism of recall and recall them. There's a lot of benefits to the Home Rule Charter. 90 seconds is not sufficient to tell you all the details, but it gives power to the people, and that is where the power should always be.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miller, do you support the Home Rule Charter as it's written? Why or not?
Yeah. I think the Home Rule Charter is the next logical step. It's definitely something that Fulshear needs to do for all the reasons Tricia so eloquently stated. And which begs the question, we should go ahead and do it, but there's opposition to it. I think there's this other viewpoint that says, well, we definitely want a Home Rule Charter, but we don't want this Home Rule Charter. Well, why? I don't know. We've been trying to figure that out, and it's the time's not allotted, and I think where it boils down to those districts, and we'll get some more time to talk about that. But we definitely do need a charter, and I think eventually we will get one. Hopefully it's this one. What's the time am I running out? Okay, anyway, there's so much more I want to say, but we got a 3-minute one coming up, so I'll save the time for that. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, great. All right, Mr. Murdoch.
Well, to be honest with you, I haven't decided. I know that doesn't answer the question yes or no, but I'm torn on it because this charter, or a charter, is needed. I feel that the manager-council government is the best option for the community. So there's just a few things in here that why I haven't said yes to. Section 3.03, the single member districts, which we'll kind of go into. The term limits, which we'll go into. But I feel that the annexation is something that this allows us to annex land more efficiently. This allows us to rule ourselves instead of mandating by the state to follow their rules. We can govern ourselves. So the power is to the people. There's probably about 93% of this document I agree with, and I'm just torn. So until I talk myself into it or out of it, then I'll let you guys know.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Ariel, what about you?
I have also been quite torn apart, just like Mr. Murdoch, but I eventually decided that I support the charter. I think we need the charter. We have spent already $60,000-70,000 on the charter from our community money, and if we want to reinvent the wheel, then it's another $60,000-70,000 going into it. I think that's too much burden for our citizens. So I think it is very good, and our city, which has already developed up more than 8,000 population, we definitely need the charter so that we can rule our regulations, and we are not regulated by a state. So we'll be home rule, we'll have all our regulations, we can take care of that. It has been very necessary and essential for the city to get into this bandwagon. And there are oppositions to it, and there are supporters to it. And it is not a perfect document. It is a live document. So every 2 years, if whoever wins on this election will be able to mandate it, will be able to change it, will be able to rectify it as per the necessity of the citizens. So it is not something cast in stone that we cannot change. So that's something really, that's why I think we should support it, because we have already spent enough money. We have spent so much time. There has been 13 people spending 4-6 months of their time. So I think it's a lot of effort put into that. So I think we should respect that and take the charter to the next level and our city to the next level. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay, Mr. Gill.
Yes, I support the Home Charter. I want to say thank you at this time. There's a number of the Home Charter Commission here this evening, and I think they did a fantastic job over a 6-month period, giving up their time to figure out this charter. Tough job. I think they did a superb job with it. The reason I support the Home Rule Charter is because primarily it brings power to the city of Fulshear, away from the state of Texas. As a general law city, we are told what to do in the main by the state of Texas. If we move to Home Rule, we can decide as a people here in this city how we want to govern our city. It gives us tremendous powers, much more powers than we have as a general law city, annexation being one of them. As Tricia was saying, you know, we would have the ability, or you as the voters would have the ability to change ordinances. If you don't like an ordinance, then just by a petition and then by a referendum, you can decide to have that ordinance changed or removed from the book. Initiative means that if there's something that you don't think is getting done, needs to get done, again by petition, and then by bringing it to the people, you can have that ordinance passed. And if one of us here or some other council member is doing something wrong that you don't like, you've got recall. You can have that person removed. So I think that gives power to the people, and I think that's an important thing. So I'm a full supporter of Home Rule. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, let's move on to the second question in talking about the Home Rule Charter. And you will have 3 minutes to answer this question, so you have a little extra time on this one. Mr. Miller, we'll begin with you. Voting districts have been a topic of much discussion when it comes to the Home Rule Charter, as we all well know. What is your opinion of this section in the Home Rule Charter?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I think it sounds like we all agree that Home Rule Charter is what we want and is the way to go. And like I said, and I've read the thing, and I've talked to a lot of you who created it, and reading through it, I mean, why wouldn't we do this? And so you try to look for the counterpoint, the other side's point of view, and it seems to be where this districting situation takes hold. So the way I understand it, my limited understanding, is so right now there's 5 of us here. We're running for 3 spots, and we're all running at large. There's 5 seats on the city council. If this charter passes, then what this charter does, it goes from 5 to 7. We draw up 5 districts, and then there'll be 2 at large. So then that brings the question. So then the districts will be drawn to be 1 representative from each district. And from what I understand, it seems to me that the people that are having a problem with it is they're like, well, it's unfair to certain groups. And you know, I'm new here. I don't understand the politics. To be honest with you, I didn't really pay much attention to the politics at all until I got involved in this thing. And now I'm learning a lot. And what I see is there's a division in this town. And I think it's kind of between what charter would best benefit Croc Creek Ranch, or what charter would best benefit Old Town Fulshear. And I know there's this language that is supposedly in the charter that is punitive to the master plan communities and where it comes to the at-large things. And reading through this thing, I read it, and like the way I read it, it's like, well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't. I can't really tell. And so I've enlisted help on the outside. I've got my work and with my due diligence firm that I do with the Texas Service Owners Association, and we work with lawyers out of that thing. I've got lawyer friends looking at this to try to help me make sense of it, because what makes sense to me is however the districts are drawn, and however the at-large being voted, because it's what's the most important thing, does each and every person in Fulshear, Texas get fair and equitable and equal representation? That fundamentally, to me, is the most important thing. And so, to be honest with you, the language in the document is, I think, it would be interpreted both ways. And kind of one way to look at it, the way it's kind of going, or like, well, that depends on what kind of council you're going to elect. And then I guess whatever council we elect on May 7th, and then those people will be sitting, and then those people will decide. So it's hard. Am I right
That's
on
your
time?
time. That's
Oh,
your
sorry.
time. Time's over. Well, thank you, though. All right, Mr. Murdoch.
I was trying to brace my ears. I don't know how loud that's going to get. That's what the Supreme Court said. That every individual should be represented, and no matter if they are registered to vote or not registered to vote. My issue is that right now that we have Cross Creek, Bodark, Fulbrook, we have Old Town Fulshear. I'm running to serve at large every individual in this community. Now, in this charter divides the city, and there is a division right now because there's interest in this city because people live in a particular area that want a different outcome than what's given. But my issue is if you divvy out the city with the size of this city, you're going to be constantly changing districts, and is that going to be feasible for our government? At large, I personally would rather have 7 people represent me than just 1 or 2. The next issue is we have 5 running. Is somebody willing and wanting to serve from each of those districts? Right now we have somebody from Bodarks and then 4 of us from Cross Creek Ranch. Cross Creek Ranch is great, but are we going to have, how's it going to be divvied out? That's a question that's going to be facing the next administration that is elected, that we're going to have to work through if this passes. I lived in Amarillo, Texas, and the members of the council there were all at large. Worked good there. That's why I liked it. I moved to Lubbock. They were districts. There were some districts that you could tell the division in the city because some districts did not get services as well as other districts, depending on the fight that particular council member had. It works in some areas and it works in other areas. I'm curious to see how it will here, but I think the next challenge is, if elected, is to embrace the charter and to work with the lawyers and the engineers of whoever does the districting and look at variables and move on that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, back over here.
So, districting has been one of the issues that I really looked closely in this charter. And I think population minorities in the Old Town Fulshear, Bodark area, and Fulbrook, where there are barely any houses yet, those people are gonna be in a disadvantage with this charter, I think. And because we have so many people in Cross Creek with 80% of people, maybe, so districting is gonna be a challenging issue, and that is why we should all sit on the table and everybody should focus on how the districting should be done so that everybody gets a fair share. And like master plan communities are not left apart, or they are not given, they should be given enough share, and also the area where there are not enough people. So I think the districting should be done more on a population basis, but making sure the areas that don't have enough population also get a representative there, and their voice are heard, and their concerns get to the city level. So I think it is up to the citizens to make sure who is their representative, who is going to represent their area, and vote for them so that they can get to the council and make sure when the districting is done, they agree on it. And the districting is done so that every part of the city is covered, everybody's voice is heard, and everybody's happy. So it is a balancing act, and that is why we are running for the council, so that we can do that. We talk to the residents, we hear from everybody, and we try to balance it, make sure everybody is it's fair for everyone. There will be, if there is somebody unhappy, then we have to listen to them and make sure why there is unhappiness on that area of town. So districting is going to be a challenging issue down the road, but we'll have to work on it. We'll have to find experts on it and make sure that it is done properly so that it is fair and it is sound. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Gill.
Thank you. Once again, I believe that the Home Charter Commission did a great job in terms of putting this together. One of the reasons that they increased the City Council from 5 council members to 7 was because of a growing population, so there are more council members to represent you, the citizens of Fulshear. With the Home Rule Charter, the way it's written, there will be 5 districts and 2 at-large positions. Those districts, the Home Rule Charter didn't address how those districts are going to be divided up. That's not, that's beyond, with respect to them, their capabilities, and certainly beyond the capabilities directly of a city council as well. That's going to need some demographic experts to look at the demographics of Fulshear. But briefly, whilst the Home Charter Commission was doing their work, there was a Supreme Court Commission judgment pending. That's now been decided, and so the districting will be on the basis of population. So it's purely going to be based on population, the numbers of people living in the city of Fulshear. Right now there's about 8,000 people living in the city of Fulshear. Divide that by 5 districts and you get about 1,600 people per district. So I guess there's about 6,000 to 7,000 people currently living in Cross Creek Ranch. That means that Cross Creek Ranch, and I'm not trying to prejudge anybody's work here or the decision of a future council, but it's most likely, just by pure statistics, that Cross Creek Ranch is going to have 4 out of the 5 districts. Then that leaves 2 at-large positions. Now, there's been some debate about what does at-large mean and whether there should be some sort of, I guess, direction as to where somebody can come from to run at large. The Home Charter doesn't specify that. It specifically says they are at large. I believe in plain English, at large to me means that those 2 candidates would represent all of the people of Fulshear and could live anywhere in Fulshear and be elected by all of the people in Fulshear, so they are genuine at-large positions. So it is quite possible that Cross Creek Ranch could have 6 out of those 7 seats. The 1 seat would be to represent the rest of Fulshear, and so that would be what's called Old Town, Bodark, Fulshear Creek Crossing, and that would be the situation currently. As the city grows, those districts would obviously change with population, because if there's more population, then the district is going to need looking at. So the point of districting is that if you are you're representing a district, you're representing 1,600 people. So you're accountable as to those 1,600 people rather than 8,000. I think that brings more accountability to your council members. You have somebody you can specifically go to with your issues and to represent you. And the 2 at-large members will be effectively, I mean, I appreciate all council members would be looking after the interests of the city of Fulshear, but there is a certain amount of accountability by being responsible for a specific district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Councilwoman Koenig.
Districting is a hot button issue. It's been highly debated in our town halls, on social media, and actually throughout the formation of the charter process. The commission brought up this topic several times, and it was interesting how they went about in addressing it. Districting is the purest form of representative government. It allows for a distinct segment to have one person to whom that elected official becomes accountable to. The charter says 5 districts, 2 at large. So I just want to take it and kind of break it down. If we assume the city of Fulshear has 8,000 people roughly, and we divide it by 5, that's 1,600 people per district. If we then further extrapolate, and there's about 6,800 people in the city, or in Cross Creek, just that development, that turns out to about 4 out of your 5 districts, 4.2 seats out of the 8,000, which comes to about 4 districts. So right there you have a majority, if your council expands to 7, a majority of your council members will come from Cross Creek. That is actually what you have today. 3 of your 5 members of council are from Cross Creek. The commission saw it important to expand the council because they knew that the city was growing. They wanted to give people more opportunity to have their voices heard. The commission said 5 districts allows those 1,600 people in each of those districts, once they're drawn by experts, based on population, purely based on population, as the Supreme Court just recently decided, they have a direct person at City Hall that they can go and be accountable to. More importantly, as an elected public servant, you have to go talk to those 1,600 people. You have a direct liaison. The charter does not use a master plan community restriction as it's been sometimes talked about. It did address the 2 at-large and that the council, if necessary, could put restrictions on that. And the reason they did that is that the Charter Commission recognized that we have to make sure everyone has an equal and undiluted voice in council. And in 2 election cycles, we have managed to eliminate our African American representation from the council. And we have historically, as a city, had an African American representative either on council or serving as mayor. The reason that condition was put in for possible restriction of to the 2 at-large positions is so that we could avoid a Department of Justice review, which would subject us to a consent decree. And a consent decree is when the federal government comes in and tells us how we're going to conduct our elections. We saw that happen recently in a neighboring city in Fort Bend County. The Charter Commission recognized that they did not want to run that risk and gave the power to the council to avoid that possible challenge from the Department of Justice.
Thank you very much for that insight. Really appreciate that. Okay, the last question on the home rule charter. We'll start with Mr. Murdoch. If the residents adopt the home rule charter, there would be an opportunity to change it after 2 years. Is there anything that you specifically would want to change?
Absolutely. I feel like that that looking at the city in 2 years from now, we will be looking at a much different picture. We'll be looking at changing the upkeep on the districting, and I would like to see the elimination of the last line in section 3.03, which reads, by ordinance establish additional qualifications for candidates or establish no more than 2 districts within each a candidate must reside or both. And what that means is, if I live 2 doors down from a person that's also serving, the council could say no, and then I wouldn't be able to run because we're both willing to serve. We both want to serve this community, and this document allows as it uses as a vehicle to allow the council to decide against it. There's also the term limits. If somebody is willing to give up 6 years to 8 years to 12 years of their time, I'd like to see that modified. I know term limits are needed to retain power, but or to not have to prevent that from occurring. But there's not much in here else that I mean, whatever business comes up between now and then might also need to be modified.
Thank you, sir. Okay, back over here.
In my opinion,
Use the microphone, please.
I think the charter has been created pretty well, and I think the districting, I don't know how it's going to work. I'm afraid that only the high amount of volume communities may take all the members. That's why I was thinking maybe we should make all at large. Maybe that's something I would be changing it in 2 years, but definitely we are going to see, we're going to talk to the citizens and see how they respond. So I think pretty much if we adopt the charter, we'll see how it pans out, and we'll be talking to residents and see how they are feeling. If we see that some residents are being biased, or if there is any kind of inconformity, then I think that's something we are going to see when the charter is implemented. And as a councilman, I'll be going and talking to people and making sure everybody is satisfied, or if not, then we'll work on amending that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gill.
The charter was obviously created with today's conditions in mind, but it was created in form as a living document. So who knows what's going to happen over the next 2 years? This is one of the fastest growing cities in the United States right now. So a lot can happen in 2 years. The most likely change I would see or predict would be with respect to the districts, because in 2 years, quite a lot of population growth could occur, and that might require some adjustment to the districting. But you know, the document has been well written as a living document, so it has that opportunity to change if necessary in 2 years. So I'm not going to say that I can just exactly what those changes are going to be and what's going to be required, but the document is there to facilitate any changes necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
I too would look at, in 2 years' time, the districts, because we are rapidly growing. Our growth rate right now in the city of Fulshear is about 900%, and we're approaching quickly 1,000% growth rate. In 2 years, our picture could look very differently. The commission, the Charter Commission, recognized that, and that's why they drafted the language the way it is, as it pertains to districting, and the right to review it for 2 years. But the Charter Commission went even further and said, should the citizens or the council not want to change in 2 years, they said you have to review it at a minimum of every 5 years, because they recognize that this is a living document. Our picture and our outlook as a city is constantly changing. So in 2 years' time, yes, I think it is prudent for the council to look at the districts, to change those if necessary, and to be mindful that we don't want to have a dilution of anyone's voice or vote in our town, and to make those modifications if necessary. But I think the charter was written with a vision for not only today's picture, but 5, 10, 15, and even 30 years down the road.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Would I change anything? Well, that depends on this question that I've admitted I'm still trying to figure out. Is it the way the districting and the at-large, if we move that direction, is it truly fair and equitable to everyone? And if it's not, then let's change that. Let's get it right. If it is, then it's great like it is. I think it's a very well-written document. Everything they just said, it's you people who put it together. I can tell you did your homework, you did your jobs, you really put a lot of thought into it. So I like it. There's a lot to like about it. It's just, to me, it boils down to that one question: is it truly fair and equitable to everybody? If it's not, let's change that. If it is, let's keep it.
Okay.